chairperson of 2 road transport corporations, chairman of 3 regional transport authorities. Presently, he is an independent director on the board of the Delhi International Airport. Secretary Ramachandran piloted the implementation of the flagship National Urban Renewal Mission in the country, introduced several level benchmark concepts for urban transport and urban bus specifications, guided the process of implementation of the first national urban transport policy in the country, and steered the introduction for the first time of state of the art 15,000 buses in the major cities of the country along with urban transport reform. Secretary Ramachandran is an author of 9 books, including a publication on reforming urban transport in India. We look forward to his new vision, how these technologies, as a matter of fact, are going to help us out in addressing the issues of greater efficiency in the sector. I'd like to invite Dr. Ramachandran. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Kulwant Singh. Greetings to all the co-participants, co-panelists, and all the participants. This topic can be looked at broadly from 2 major segments. One, that of the national highways network in the country, and the other, that of urban or city transport. It is a known fact that in our country, majority of passenger and goods movement happen through the highways, as only 2% of the national highways, with a length of over 150,000 kilometers, carry nearly 40% of traffic, which makes it the primary mode of transportation in the country. ITS, Intelligent Transport System, is a system deployed by several countries the world over to provide a number of services to enhance the operational performance of highway networks. One such digitalization process is the introduction of electronic toll collection in national highways, known as FASTag. Some 450 toll plazas had dedicated FASTag lanes at the beginning of last year, but with the mandating of this as a default mode of toll payment, with effect from 15 December last year, and as of last month, over 17 million FASTags have been issued, carrying out 4 million transactions, amounting to 65 65 crores each day. This has helped to bring down the logistics cost. Also, the National Highways Authority of India, the authority responsible for national highways, is able to rely on digitization to increase the pace of execution of projects with better quality monitoring using various IoT devices at field like drones, LIDAR, network survey vehicles, GPS devices. National Highways Authority has also become the first fully digital construction agency in the country. Countries like the US and those in Europe deploy a variety of ITS devices like automated systems, automated enforcement, ramp metering, variable message signs, electronic screening, call centers, credentials administration, and so on. There are various areas where we still need to move forward, while electronic toll collection helped reduce congestion at toll booths, besides ensuring transaction security and reduction of and reducing revenue leakage. ITS applications in commercial vehicles operation is bound to improve productivity and efficiency of trucking and interstate bus operations, a point highlighted by the Transport Development Policy Committee as well. Such operations will naturally enhance commercial vehicle safety, communication between carriers and consignees, fleet management, and better facilitate regulatory processes also. Seamless movement across states, doing away with the present hassle of having to wait at state borders, sometimes for hours even, will be another positive. When it comes to urban mobility and the role of digitization, it has been well recognized that ITS can play a key role. It refers to the use of location, information, and communication technologies to make travel safe, energy efficient, seamless, and comfortable. Possible areas for ITS applications in India have been identified as intelligent operation of traffic lights, capturing and recording traffic-related data, parking arrangement, assistance from the transport authority, recognition of number plates, ownership data, linking registration expiry alerts, linkage with crime data, traffic laws compliance, pollution control assistance, accident control, breakdown assistance, linkage with multimodal fare card, multipurpose transport helpline, and so on. For the passenger, what is important is a well laid out and functional passenger information system that can tell commuters beforehand when their bus will arrive or when and which metro train to board for onward journey. This would also promote common ticketing across modes. The much talked about single mobility card, which can be used for any mode in any part of the country, is still to become a reality. The progress so far we have been able to achieve is that of a card which can be used both on metro and public bus system, as in Delhi, where the Delhi Metro and the Transport Authority have started working together. The NCMC card, one hopes, will soon be able to address the open loop issue, and the commuter can soon hope for a card which can be used for transport as well as for parking, shopping, and the like, thereby avoiding the need to carry different cards. A brief overview of the process through which our cities have been able to reach today's digitization penetration in the city transport service, at least in some cities and towns, if not all, would be in order at this stage. Like many other initiatives which got moving, it was again the National Urban Transport Policy of 2006, which listed introduction of intelligent transport systems for traffic management as one of the objectives of the policy. To take the process of operationalizing this policy, two major steps were taken. One, announcement of the concept of service level benchmarks for the urban transport sector, which included level of usage of ITS facilities as one of the components. Under this, 5 activities are to be benchmarked by cities, namely availability of traffic surveillance, passenger information system, global positioning system, signal synchronization, and integrated ticketing system. The second step was that of supporting projects which promote an effective and sustainable urban transport system, with the requirement that each project proposal for urban transport should be able to link to the measurable improvement in the service level benchmarks. What gave a real fillip to the process of digitization in the city transport segment was the historic decision by the Central Ministry of Urban Development to provide more than 15,000 modern state-of-the-art buses to the Indian cities under the Urban Renewal Mission. Cities were to simultaneously undertake urban transport reforms as well, and one of the reforms was introduction of ITS. This led to a little over 18,000 modern buses being provided in over 170 cities. Also, urban bus specifications got formulated for the first time, which became the standard for city buses. Some of the early projects taken up for promoting technology, mostly under the National Urban Renewal Mission, included intelligent transport system for the bus rapid transit corridor in Delhi, in the form of introduction of ITS, which provided for intelligent signaling system, implementation of vehicle tracking and control system using GPS technology, and in some 550 vehicles of the Metropolitan Transport Corporation of Chennai, and in another 50 vehicles of the State Express Transport Corporation, and in yet another 887 SLF vehicles in that city fitted with onboard units. Tracking vehicles online and taking corrective action, providing passengers with information about expected time of arrival of the next bus became possible, and the interactive voice response system enabled the control center to talk to the drivers, conductors, and pass on instructions. The Karnataka State Road Transport Corporation took up ITS project for Mysuru city under the Urban Renewal Mission, claimed to be the first of its kind in the history of Indian state transport. Undertakings undertakings to cover buses, bus stops, bus terminals, and platforms with a system covering automatic vehicle location, passenger information system, information display in vehicles, bus stops, terminals, etc., with a central control station and generation of MIS reports. Bus rapid system in Ahmedabad was another pioneer in the area when they introduced ITS intervention ranging from wireless station door operations by driver, RFID-based docking system, real-time network systems for ticketing, real-time GPS-based vehicle tracking system, enabling passenger information system. At this stage, I would like to make a brief reference to some of the key initiatives in the last 5 years in different parts of the country where the deployment of technology, not only bus users have been given better facilitation, but operators of public transport also have benefited. Computerized duty schedules introduced in Mumbai's BEST, the bus transport company there, implemented on PPP mode, helped improve efficiency of operations, efficiency of operating crew. The expectation was the undertaking will be saving approximately rupees 80 crores in staff cost over 3 years. Bhopal is another city bus which went in for vehicle tracking system, CCTV surveillance, real-time ticket monitoring with camera surveillance. Hyderabad went in for toll management system on the outer ring road and highway traffic management system. This is just listing some of the examples. There are quite a number as far as cities are concerned. There cannot be two opinions that digitization brings in a host of opportunities for the public transport sector, including opportunities to increase efficiency, improve quality, lower costs, open up new revenue streams, improve the customer experience, and explore new services with new concepts like mobility as a service and new emerging technologies like driverless cars. The usage of smartphones has played half a minute more. The usage of smartphones has played a major role in achieving these technological changes from the customer point of view. But there is a lot more still to be done by our state transport undertakings, private bus operators, and city administrations to leverage the full advantage of digitalization opportunities available. The question seems to be how to find the additional resources required to be deployed, and can such investment benefit be passed on to the user, at least to a certain extent. Of course, these are not the days when such a major change can be expected to take place, mainly because public transport itself will be finding it difficult to make both ends meet in the stressed circumstances of today. But once we reach normalcy, more cities and transport undertakings will have to think in terms of going more digital. Thank you, Kulvanji. Over to you.
Thank you very much for giving a very comprehensive overview of what is happening in the country and how digitization is bringing in host of opportunities for the sector to further improve and strengthen and also bring in a lot of efficiency in this. Our next panelist is Mr. Karl Alexander Seidel, who is head of Daimler Buses India and is responsible for the development, production, and sales of Bharat-Benz buses, Mercedes-Benz luxury coaches, and bus chassis for India, as well as exports of bus chassis and fully built buses to markets in Africa, Latin America, Middle East, and Southeast Asia. In the past, he has headed various functions, including logistics, supplier and quality management, and operations at Daimler Buses India. We are actually looking forward to the vision of his company with a focus on disruptive technologies in the bus sector. The floor is yours, my dear sir, Mr. Seidel.
Thank you, dear Kulwant. Thank you for giving this opportunity. I would like to start with the situation that I see currently the bus market in the world. So now, can I have the first slide, please?
Sonam.
Actually, the global bus market is very diverse. And if you look at the global bus market, there are a lot of regions that have volumes. There is page 3, please. There are only a few markets who have significant numbers. There is number 1 is China, and number 2 is India. And if you look at the numbers of 2019, we had 43,500 units above 9 ton in the Indian market, which is a huge market. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, there is now a huge drop. And just to give you and also the from abroad, we're amongst our 240 participants, we have some that are not so familiar with India. In June, the total industry volume were 160 units. If this continues, then we will end up in a range of around about 20,000 this year, and therefore you see here our forecast. It's not very optimistic. So COVID will bring us down in the complete industry for the next 2 years significantly. However, and Dr. Ramachandran made it also very clear in his speech, the transportation industry is an important sector all over the world, and especially here in India. So I'm confident that although the growth is predicted to be very slow, that also the future will be significant for the urban industry as well as other transportation industries. So therefore, I'm confident that what I present here is in future also reality. Now come to the now and here and not to the future. What we do? Kulwant Singh has already mentioned, I'm part of the Daimler group. Next page, please. Daimler is a huge company. We are number 1 in commercial vehicles. With the buses of Daimler, we are also number 1 in the world. And my entity, Daimler Bus India, as part of the ICV, Daimler India Commercial Vehicles, I the hub for India and the second hemisphere of Daimler buses. As you can see, we are not only serving India with more than 180 touch points, but also we are exporting in the complete second hemisphere our chassis and buses. What is it, what we produce and what we deliver to our customers? Next page, please. This is the range between 9 ton and 24 ton. So we have staff buses, school buses, tourist buses. We deliver chassis to the market in the 10 ton, 9 ton segment and in 16 ton segment. We have the 24 ton luxury bus segment, 3 axle coaches, one of the other our buses already on the road here in India, running on long distance. In exports, we so far have concentrated on the 9 ton and 16 ton chassis. And new, we have also now the fully built vehicles. And here the school bus is only representative. So the fully built goes now also into exports. The brands are multiple. Bharat-Benz is the brand for India, as Bharat stands for the vibe that goes to all over India. So the Benz is the vehicle for that. In exports, we concentrate on this and on Fuso. Domestic, we have this full range available in BS6. However, market in 24 ton, which is in May and June 0, there is not much hope that there are huge volumes coming. But now let's come to the topic of today, digitization and the transportation systems. Please, next slide. Let's go directly into the technology solutions that are currently in the progress. So I see currently that we focus on 4 pillars in the technology solutions in the next page, please. These 4 segments, I would like to just briefly name them case technologies. we are talking about connectivity. Dr. Ramachandran made also this pitch, said connectivity is a huge topic. This is autonomous driving, which is obviously in India not in the near future a topic. Services, where the information technology comes in, and also the integrated transportation system. And last but not least, of course, electric buses and everything with electrification. Where do we from Bus India work currently in order to serve this, especially to India? Let's now concentrate really on India. Next page, please. Specifically, we work on the 3 pillars of connectivity, on shared services, and on electric buses. How do we do that? Let me bring you a little bit into what is reality and what is the next step. In terms of connectivity, next slide, please. So we offer with BS6 in our buses now the so-called Bus Connect. This is a platform where we offer for the operators as well as for the passengers some of the services that are already existing also standalone solutions in the market. So for the operators, he can do his fleet management with this application. The passengers management, which passengers, how many in which bus, is my bus fully loaded, etc. You can evaluate exactly what is the fuel economy in dashboards, where are breakdowns, where is overspeeding happening, so the complete transparency of the functions of the vehicle. And last but not least, you can have the full statistics on the tracking of the fleet, where are the fleets, when is a bus crossing which border, etc. For the passengers, we try to implement the most common functions, which is the route selection, which route can I take, when is the bus coming, the geofencing. Then we integrated entertainment app so that you can also use in the bus then entertainment like videos, like a news channel, music, etc. And especially for our own buses, of course, you can also collect borrowed miles, which then can be used for certain advertisement accessories, etc. What is next? Dr. Ramachandran mentioned the initiatives in urban cities for e-ticketing and other topics like fast tech, etc. So this is now the next step, that we open up our Bus Connect also to other apps and other providers, so that then you have one platform as a portal to everything what the passenger needs in the bus. Next slide, please. In the shared services, we want to bring to India what we are currently doing in Germany. In Germany, we are currently supporting and consulting cities to implement the complete transportation system. So whatever is there in terms of intelligent transportation system is what we try to figure out and to make as a consultant, bring together all the infrastructures along with the products, with everything that is in service required as a general project manager to the cities, and enable the cities to establish exactly this complete infrastructure or infrasystem. So this we offer also here in India. If a city wants to work on that, we want to help them to establish that. Obviously, having in mind that our buses are the best suitable buses then to operate that, of course. Last but not least, next slide, please. Let's look into the electric buses. Well, the government has released frame programs for promoting electric drive in India. This is mainly coming currently for the two-wheelers and for the four-wheelers. However, the infrastructure to charge e-vehicles is one part of that. So what we are doing is we are closely monitoring what is the progress here in India and preparing in parallel our concept, how can we go into the market whenever there is a strong need. Currently, I personally don't see that we have the mass market coming in the next 12 months. Why is it so? If you look at the prices of those buses, they are very, very high. The reason for that is that we in India so far have no local battery. So the battery is the most expensive part of an electric bus, as we have to ensure a long distance drive as well. So for me, one of the crucial topics to decide when will be there an explosion, a revolution in electric buses in India will be when we find suppliers who are willing to localize the battery technology for electric drive here in India. And I hope that with the announcement from Modi that vocal for local is now the key, that really also some suppliers have the courage to invest now and to come up with that. And this is then for Bus India and for me, the topic to say yes, within a time span of 12 to 18 months. Then after localization, we will come to the market and offer also electric buses. These were the technology solutions. Next, please. Let's have a look into what comes next in terms of technology innovation. This is, next please, for me, the complete ecosystem of an intelligent transportation system. And Dr. Ramachandran already mentioned that there are a lot of initiatives taken from the government to enable these transportation topics like fast tech, like ticketing, like frames in the cities. So all these topics I see as currently standalone solutions. And for me, and this is what we in Germany currently consult and support in bringing this into the city at one ecosystem, is all these topics that you see here, be it vehicle communication, vehicle infrastructure communication, be it the fleet management, etc., bring this all together in an ecosystem where all passengers, operators, and the government can benefit from the togetherness. This is what I see as the next step, which we have to bring in here in India. This is what comes there very, very soon. Last but not least, I see that everything what we do with all the technologies, with the digitization, with the transportation system technologies, this should have not only the benefit for the passenger, the operator, and the OEMs, this should also be a benefit for the environment. And therefore, for me, connectivity or the autonomous driving or the e-buses should also contribute to the overall Indian environment. And therefore, I want here also to bring together that connectivity and all these technologies should aim also for a sustainable environment. With this, let me just make my final speech as let's say, a commitment and also on a request to all of you. For me, we are living in a change. And this change is part of our life. Every cell is growing and changing every single minute. So therefore, let's really accept this change and let's work on exactly the future of what I presented. I personally are committed to that. I want to make this change happen. I don't want to live in memories, which is the past. I don't want to believe only in imaginations, which is the future. I want to move forward and to live now in the present and do something now. And therefore, my team is committed to exactly deliver these topics so that we all can bring it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Syed. I think what you said is perfectly right, that change actually reflects work in progress. And you have very nicely presented what you said, case technologies, connectivity, autonomous, shared services, and electric. One of our focus in the next webinar is going to be on the electric buses, electric mobility, and we do have scheduled that on 16th of this month. And there we are going to have, I would say that the CEO of Niti Aayog joining us. sharing some of the policy initiatives for enhancing the investments and the issues that you have really raised. There is no doubt that, the points that you have mentioned about the intelligent transportation systems, we do need one ecosystem, which you have underlined, and we do hope that we will be moving to that direction. And your company, the way it is really taking us forward in this country, along with other actors, along with other OEMs, I am sure that we should be able to achieve the kind of goals which the industry really needs. I'll now like to invite Ms. Stephanie Holsworth from the UN Habitat. Stephanie is an urban and regional planner. She is working in the urban mobility team at the UN Habitat. She has been working on sustainable mobility and urban development projects for the last about 7 years, providing technical advice, knowledge, and advocacy to governments. Presently, Steffi is supporting consultative processes of stakeholders to develop mobility strategies that are adapted to local needs, international experiences, and best practices. We like to, give the floor to her. Let her share the vision in which, as a matter of fact, how we can really work so closely with the UN Habitat's vision in this regard. Thank you, Steffi. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh, and also thank you very much for the interesting presentations that we have heard so far. My name is Stephanie Holsworth, and I work in the urban mobility team at UN Habitat. We can actually move to the next slide. I wanted to briefly introduce UN Habitat for the participants that might not be familiar with it. We are the United Nations Human Settlements Program. And in short, we are really the cities agency of the United Nations. We are promoting transformative change in cities and human settlements through different services that we are offering. And those services include knowledge, policy advice, and technical assistance on different urban planning related aspects. UN Habitat is serving 95 countries around the world through different projects, but our headquarters are in Nairobi in Kenya, and that's also where I am located. So I might be bringing in a little bit more a global perspective into the topic. Next slide, please. I would like to start my presentation by putting us back to the framework of sustainable urban mobility. And that framework is based on the avoid, shift, and improve paradigm. It's important to understand that the logic is really moving from the left to the right. So in terms of achieving sustainable urban mobility, we would first and foremost try to start by avoiding and reducing the need for motorized travel. That, for example, could be done through transport demand management. We would then look at how we can shift to more environmentally friendly modes, for example, by promoting more urban public transport, but also other modes such as walking and cycling and more shared mobility. And we would then look at how can we improve energy efficiency of the transport modes. That's, for example, where fuel efficiency comes in, but also electric mobility and electric mobility being powered by renewable energy. What I want to say is that digitalization can really be an enabler for all those different subcategories that I have mentioned. But today, I think the focus is also on public transport, also in my presentation. We can move to the next slide. Digitalization can have a revolutionary impact on public transport. And I would like to invite you through a quick visual journey of before and after images of projects that UN Habitat had been engaged in. Next. This is an example from Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, where you can see on the left side the original public transport system that was prevailing in Dar es Salaam. Public transport was operated in minibuses that were called dala-dalas, and has now, since a few years, moved to one of Africa's most successful BRT systems. They have implemented the first corridor, but are right now very much planning and implementing also upcoming corridors. What is important to note is that the BRT system is very much implemented based on a digital system, and you can see the control center on the top photo. You can move to the next. This is an example of a public transport planning exercise that took place in Nairobi. On the left top, number 1, you can see what is called the digital Matatus map. Matatus are the current minibuses that are operating in Kenya. And for the first time, the university had started mapping the routes and the stops of that minibus system. And that was really an amazing insight into an otherwise very informal system that is based on paratransit. Unhabitat then came in and trained students to help us conduct transport demand studies to identify the highest demand corridors for public transport. From there, we have moved to develop what is called the proposed mass transit route, really looking at those corridors that have high public transport demands, and then planning for those corridors to be fitted with an efficient mass rapid transit system. And from there, a BRT service plan was developed. This is really one example that shows a very innovative approach on data collection that led to a BRT scenario planning. Next. This is an example from Hyderabad in India. I guess many of you might be familiar with that system. It's about smart bicycles that are offering first and last mile connectivity to the metro commuters. And it's very much also based on a digital system behind where smartphones can be used to unlock and lock the bicycles and track the bicycles and so on. We can move to the next. What we believe at Unhabitat is that the main objective of digitalization of public transport should really be to achieve a model shift to sustainable urban mobility. So achieving that model shift by utilizing digitalization and the opportunities that it provides to improve the quality, the convenience, the safety, and so on of public transport, and therefore attract more people into public transport and hopefully out of their private cars. Next. I would like to share a few examples of digitalization of public transport that mostly come from research that is being done by Fraunhofer Mobility, which is a multidisciplinary network providing expertise and research for the transformation of mobility services. They are subdividing it into digital assistance in public transport with a strong user focus, management and integration of public transport data, and then also electronic and mobile ticketing. Next. In terms of the digital assistance for public transport users, it becomes very handy, especially when passengers are not familiar with the public transport system in a city. If you are entering a city and you don't know how to move around, the conventional approach that you would take is probably using a taxi or private car. So those apps that are being developed can really facilitate the navigation of public transport systems and make them much more attractive and provide incentives to also use them. Besides mere navigation, they can also, through real-time information, report, for example, about delays, disruptions, accessibility of the public transport stops, and so on. Besides using only smartphones, we see that there is new devices coming into the market, for example, smartwatches and also smart glasses that use augmented reality. But also an innovative new feature is Bluetooth beacons that, for example, inform passengers about an approaching bus at a public transport station. All this has very many benefits because it allows a more personalized and a more needs-based navigation that is very much customer-oriented, can reduce waiting time, enhance safety, and so on. As one example, I would like to mention SmartWay. It's a navigation service and an app that is being utilized, for example, by the train services in Germany and in Switzerland. And what's very interesting is that it really combines data from very many different mobility providers. Next. The management and integration of public transport data is also very interesting, because nowadays also public transport customers are expecting up-to-date and accurate information. So cities and operators really have to start responding to that. It allows for innovative data collection that then enhances public transport planning, for example, in terms of operations, investments, fare structures, and so on. But what is very much needed is a stable, comprehensive data management and information processing system that really can store the information, analyze the information, and also provide that real-time data that is very much needed. All this can very much increase the efficiency of public transport operators and also improve the city planning, and therefore lower the costs that are related to it. Next. Okay, I think there's a little bit of an issue of the formatting of my PowerPoint. There should be many more pictures, but with this slide, I wanted to show an example of GoMetro. It's a South African-based company that supports cities in collecting data on their paratransit networks in cities, and it's really an amazing approach that they're using, and you might find more information on their website. We can go to the next slide. The last point, the last example that I want to mention is electronic and mobile ticketing. What is very much important is that it really needs to be used to integrate between the modes. You might have seen that paper tickets are increasingly being replaced by electronic alternatives. We have heard from the first speaker about very many examples also in Indian cities. And this integrated ticketing can really also help to integrate public transport services. It has the benefit of providing a better ease and convenience of the purchase of the tickets, more flexible payment methods, and it's much more adapted to the individual needs of combining different mobility services. It also has the benefits that it provides the opportunity for more tailor-made tickets for specific user groups. That, for example, could be companies that would like to provide subsidies for public transport fares for their employees. The outcome of an electronic ticketing system is that it can very much reduce the boarding time, because you can avoid the interaction of the passenger and the driver of the vehicle, and it also increases reliability and efficiency, and probably lesser corruption of the public transport services. At the same time, I would like to mention that it's still important to have sales points available, especially for different user groups. For example, people with disability or the elderly that are just not very familiar with those systems. One example of such an electronic ticketing and integrated ticketing is the Touch and Go smart card in Kuala Lumpur that combines very many different modes. Next. Besides all the benefits that we have heard in terms of digitalization, I would also draw our attention to a few risks that are connected to it and risks that we have to minimize as people that are working in the field. One of them is the exclusion of particular groups of society that might be elderly, that are just not very familiar with digital devices, or the poor sections of the society that might also have lesser access to digital media. On top of that, there is always data privacy issues and cyber threats, so it's very much important also for the digital systems to minimize on those ones. And digitalization can also be particularly challenging for the more traditional operators. And here I might be talking about the minibuses that we have in very many cities around the world, because they really have to redefine their businesses. It's changing their governance structures. They have to bring forward new costs. They might have to look out for new staff profiles because the expertise is not yet in-house. So it also brings quite a bit of challenges, especially for those operators. Next. this is my last slide. I would just provide a few recommendations that we have come across with when we have worked with cities around the world. But very much should be avoided, and the speaker from Daimler has also mentioned it, is really standalone sectoral solutions. We should utilize ITS and digitalization to digitally combine different modes of transport for an optimal use. We should be looking at platforms such as mobility as a service that really brings together different actors. I think it's also important to look at homegrown solutions, local solutions. There is a lot of startups popping up all around the world, also in the cities that we are working with. And I think it's also very important to look at what they have to offer and to promote those ones. We should also be looking at multi-stakeholder partnerships, encourage open access, and really bring the right stakeholders together, public entities, city governments, with the companies, with data users, and so on. Interoperability always needs to be promoted. Technical standards for conditions of the devices need to be developed. And it's very important, once digitalization is entering into cities, that the capacities of the municipalities to collect, maintain, and analyze the data are also developed and strengthened. With that, I would like to close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steffi. You really took us around the world. From, I would say that Tanzania to Nairobi, then to Kuala Lumpur, India, Germany, and everywhere else for that matter. I think thank you so much. What you mentioned is perfectly right, that there is a digital divide, but this digital divide also is among the young on the one side and the old and the senior citizens on the other. So basically, I think there is a need for continuous capacity building in one form or the other, not only of the institutions and organizations, but also of the individuals. A continuous, continuous knowledge is really required for all that. I take this opportunity inviting my last speaker. We are just running out of time, no doubt, but Mr. Alok Sethi, who's the Senior General Manager, Transportation Technology Solution with DIMS Limited. He brings with him nearly 20 years of experience in intelligent transportation systems. Alok has done multiple projects on ITS, mainly including deployment of GPS, GIS, PIS, fare collection system, paratransit, ITS, etc. India is moving. That's what I think, we are also finding it. Alok has been involved in the role of policy designing, procurement strategy, technical architecture, solution, scheme design, etc. Apart from the above, Alok is also active member of some of the standardization efforts with the Bureau of Indian Standards for formulation of relevant standards for the Indian industry, very particularly for the bus transport. I'd like to invite Alok. The floor is Alok's yours.
Thanks a lot, Kulwanji. I represent DIMS, as Kulwanji said, and there is a lot of floor already which has been covered by Ramachandranji, Alexander, and Stephanie. So I would like to straight away move into the ITS part of it. And so I represent a company called DIMS, and we are, a joint venture between Delhi government and IDFC Foundation. And we have been, looking at implementing mainly ITS and related public transport interventions since 2009. And that's where my role has been in implementing. And then later on moving into standardization and policy, as all the other speakers earlier mentioned, that there is a digital divide. Unless these technologies talk to each other, there would not be any unified solution which would finally be used by public transport users for the commuter. So I'll just run you through the presentation, the agenda. So most of the overview of ITS has already been covered by the earlier speakers, so I'll just run it fast. So if you look at ITS for public transportation, though ITS is a much bigger field, as Sri Ramachandranji said, so you have signaling, you have commercial freight, but for public transport, we look at the public transport operation, the public information management, the electronic payment, which is basically your fare collection. Then you have now security and crew management, which is coming in as a big intervention, and emergency or incident management. So if you look at ITS as we know it, GPS or vehicle location has been the first early starter, and you had OBUs coming in as part of GNN Arium, and then now you have AIS 140 being promoted by Morth. You have fare collection technologies, which are basically ATMs, validator, QR codes, mobile ticketing nowadays. Passenger information, very critical, wherein we started with PIS boards, digital displays. Now it's more on mobile and Androids. Then you have security cameras, transmitting and providing that end of the ITS gamut. If you look at ITS, you basically have technologies which are divided into field devices. You have a lot many of them, and that's where most of the technology innovations keep coming in. And then we have this problem of moving in from one technology to the other and creating a system wherein some parts of the systems don't talk, and the passengers don't realize the complete benefit of it. And then you have communication networks. As we have seen it, we've been moved from 2G to 4G, now 5G. So communication network has played a very important role in proliferation of ITS technologies per se. Then you have application software, then the standard IT or data centers. You have big command control centers which are required for the public transport agencies to manage their fleet, and then the relevant ICT infrastructure. One part which is changing dynamically over the years has been the dissemination modes, from right from big PIS displays to digital displays, and now coming to mobile phones, smartphones, and smartwatches as we move forward. This is a typically solution of ITS enabled bus, because we are talking about enabled buses. So you have various devices which go into a bus, which are mainly onboard units, driver control units, bus PIS for passengers, DVR and CCTV cameras. And then you have GPS device, which is transmitting the location. Depending on the fare collection module, you might have a conductor with an ETM or a validator wherein you touch and go. And you have, public user interface either through a mobile or a website. And, for the commuter sitting on a bus station, you have a PIS code. For the bus operation side, you have a command center which actually looks at all this data, uses it real time to flexibly manage their route schedules, and look at what interventions are required for better movement of public transport at that point. We've had a lot of discussion about ITS being users in public transport. So we've divided it mainly into you can have service reliability. So looking at the GPS devices and real-time tracking enable a lot of real-time management of public transport to see whether journeys are being performed on time, passengers are being served on time, or there is a delay. Using this information to give improved incident management, improved service quality. Now you have the BS4 and BS6, you have CAN interventions, so the real-time data from bus operations could be used by control centers to look at preventive maintenance, look at breakdown. Then you have commuter services. You have real-time data coming in. You can have a real-time journey planner which a commuter can use to plan his journey. A multimodal one could give him all real options. He could see a real-time solution on which bus, which mode is the next one he can take. Then going forward, right now there are a lot of cities who are talking about mobile ticketing, and currently in COVID times, with cashless ticketing coming forward for public transport, this is one of the very focus areas. Revenue management, if you look at proper operation management for a bus, is a very critical area, and that's where we have been seeing in last 10 years. If you look at all the STUs, whether it is urban or state run, they have been implementing some sort of fare collection solution, whether it is with handled ETMs, online ETMs, or validators, or now with NCMC cards. All this data, is like now digitizing your office. Everybody has computers and all data is online. So similarly, this data for a public transport helps you plan schedules, have look at operational flexibilities, optimize your business processes, optimize your operation schedules, and for a better, efficient public transport. So I'll just move into some of the time is short, so I'll just cover it fast. This is where we started. So in 2009, this is what we had, the old DTC and blue lines in Delhi, and one run by either single owners or a collection of owners, and you have DTC, which was a state carrier. And we had to move to a improved or a much better public transport system using both public and private partnerships. So we moved to a cluster scheme wherein the orange buses were included. And the scheme, as it is called today, was a very different scheme wherein the focus was on services provided. So all payments to private operators are done through ITS, and there is we were creating a new organization, so we had this luxury of automating whatever was possible at that point. And we used ITS to actually look at the delivery of this complete contractual model with digital data. So AVL and ETMs were used, and if you look at the model, on-time benchmarks were important, and the payments were depending on whether all the trips were being made on time, whether there were certain mistrips or there are other infractions like overspeeding, accidents, and exceeding a basic performance level, he was paid incentives for that. So for enabling that, we went to two base ITS underlying technologies. One was ETM, which is basically a fare collection mechanism. And what we did in 2010, when we were selecting it, we went for a terminal which could, take cards, which could take contactless cards, which was a bank payment solution and was online. So, it allowed us with that flexibility of knowing the bus occupancy or transactions in real time and plan for any pilferage if it was happening. Similarly, with the AVL system, we went with a system which is, could give us complete real-time information as to what we were performing. So rather than looking at, a map or seeing a bus moving on that, our focus was, whether a trip is being run, whether it is run on time, whether there are possibilities of improving this performance over time, and using all this data to do a better schedule, better optimized solution. And that's how we have been using this data and improvising from the day we started. So if you look at the basic solution, it's like provides you the complete tracking, high precision tracking, and complete dashboards depending on depot manager, fleet operator, or our control center. And we monitor each and every trip so as to look at whether it was full, whether it was cut or it was missed, whether driver behavior has been, GPS gives you overspeeding pattern, driving, harsh braking, harsh acceleration. So all those is used by us for our own efficient operations or training of our drivers or conductors in the long run. So if you look at pure ITS, we used ITS key tools to for a better implementation, or saying we need to do congestion management or congestion prediction, we need to do ridership patterns, we need to do fare analytics. So all these data points were available from the base data and were used and analyzed. I'll give you two examples. If you look at so we do we will be, if you look at, we do around say 20,000 trips, and there would be a lot of trips which will get delayed because of congestion in Delhi or traffic in Delhi. And obviously, there is no point penalizing operator because it was, not his fault per se. And so there is a facility in the software where he claims there was traffic jams. So there is a tool which, looks at all the vehicles moving at that point and analyzes whether it was actually a jam, or, the trip started late because the driver was late, or, all that stuff. And that's made into a tool which our operation managers use. And if you look at, I'm just using a very old figure of February 2014, if 207 trips were claimed, 2019 were, validated traffic jams, and the claims rejected were with a digital proof coming from the GPS data. Similarly, the fare collection in GPS data were used. A particular route called 4540 we analyzed why we have a particular earning per kilometer. So say we were in Jan 12 at 25.5, and then we realized with the fare collection patterns that, a large part of the trip towards the end is not paying us any, revenue. So what we decided was an intervention of, changing a route and, extending the longer trip to a alternate schedule. So every 5 minutes, the bus will go to the longer route, and some route was cut short. So all this business analytics is coming out of ITS and the base data provided. Similarly, if you look at the earlier experience of KSRTC was one of the first ones to do it in SUTP. And, they went only for the GPS-based tracking and public information system with a control room. And they, if you look at their results, they had an increase of around 15% in ridership. Vehicle utilization increased from 247 to 251. Crew utilization increased, and they, could see a lot of improvement in operational discipline. So the commuter used to get a bus when, it was scheduled to be there. Similarly, there have been experiences all across. I have listed Indore also. So Indore also went through an ITS implementation through SUTP, and though it was a BRT come mixed use, and they have realized, with fare collection, they have seen revenue jump from 62 per kilometer to 90 kilometers, 90 rupees per kilometer. They have seen a 19% increase in ridership. They have seen an average trip length grow. Accidents have reduced. Overspeeding instances have reduced. So like we said, we have had a lot of experience. Now it's more of that time wherein, ITS becomes mainstream. It's like computer in your office. You can't do bus operations without ITS in your bus or in your public transport. There has been a lot of experience over the last 5-7 years. And, what came out strikingly was, there is a lack of capacity, like everybody is saying. There is a lack of capacity at the public transport and the operators and even the municipalities who are running the urban buses. So to do with that, there was an earlier ITS manual which was done under the SUTP program. There is one more which is being funded by Ministry of Urban Development and World Bank right now. The plan is to, plug this gap and, move it into a training module which is run by IUT, Institute of Urban Transport, or CIRT, to train each set of people, right from, the managers, the decision makers, to people who are driver and conductors and schedule makers, route designers. And this manual, covers the complete ITS framework, right from the planning stage. How do you plan your ITS? How do you select functions and services around it? Then designing of ITS, how do you design your ITS if you are, a 100 bus city or maybe a 5,000 bus STU? Then looking at implementation frameworks, looking at, how do you do testing? How do you commission a system? How do you go ahead from, commissioning to O&M? And then evaluation of the system and how effective it is, whether it is, giving you the desired results or not. This manual is, is being made final. It will be released shortly by MOUD, and it would be a great tool. What we think it will be a great tool in assisting the STUs and municipalities in, ramping up or, increasing the capacity at that level of implementing and taking MIS. The other part which is missing, had been missing for a long time, for, having a very integrated solution. You have multiple modes, you have paratransit, you have metro, you have buses, you have minibuses, to all that to come together and, provide final ride to a commuter. You need all these systems to talk. And, with the technology growing in, there are multiple, interfaces. You have devices, you have softwares, you have GIS. So for that, BIS has been, so if you look at TED 28, which is on ITS, they have been, working on a lot of solutions. If you look at one of the basic ingredients of ITS, that is the vehicle tracking device, has been, there is a standard called AIS 140, which got finalized. And finally, after, so many years, we have a common protocol wherein, the same device or the same type of protocol can be used, and the application developers can develop tracking applications on top of it. It's not a proprietary protocol. It is, over 100 manufacturers now currently make devices conforming to that. Similar to that, we did a exercise of doing a vehicle location tracking device plus CCTV and auto fare meter in BIS. So IS 16833, which is already published and is available, brings in that kind of standardization. So everybody knows what to make, who to test, and the developers or the application developers know what kind of protocol will come, and so that they can integrate whatever devices. So there is no dependence on legacy hardware. There are a few committees which are working on a bus ITS complete framework, which is, so that, when somebody is procuring buses, at that time, they could, just go in for the hardware and any system could talk to them. So there is, now if you look at a collaborative, we are looking at a collaborative telematics application framework, wherein there would be a lot of application developers, there will be a lot of service providers, but the whole effort and whole protocol would be driven by a standard, and you would have multiple parts to it, as to how you will be onboarded, how you will provide services, and how you will charge it to the customers. This is currently in pipeline, and once it gets accepted, I think these problems of interoperability and all sharing of data between various cities or various service providers would get eliminated. Now, coming at to current intervention during the Corona or the COVID times, I feel two interventions, which is one is contactless ticketing, should bring that kind of confidence to commuters to come to public transport. We have been working on it, NCMC and other, but my thought is, we need it to be agnostic of the way it is. It needs to be contactless, whether it is QR, whether it is mobile, whether it is Bluetooth, whether it is an NCMC card, hardly matters to the customer. He needs to be provided this facility. One other facility with reduced capacity is whether you have seating capability in that bus. If looking at daily experience, when you are running a bus which is fully packed, now you have to do away with 20 people only. The commuter needs to know whether he's standing on a bus stand, whether the next bus which is coming has capacity for me to on board or not. So this is one of the main features which I think a lot of application developers have tried and incorporate, but should be made available all across for people to start moving into public transport. Like I said, with ITS, we say there are endless possibilities which could benefit the customer, and that's where I would like to end, and thank you all.
Thank you, Alok. There are endless possibilities and we need to exploit them.
Yeah.
Because without exploiting those endless possibilities, we may not be able to improve the, I would say, particularly the post-COVID situation. Public transportation does need a lot of changes that are required. Not only the public transport, but also, I would say, the whole urban planning itself will undergo a big change. Well, friends, there are so many questions that are there. It will not be perhaps possible to take up quite a few of them. Basically, there are specially questions addressed to Mr. Seidel, but Mr. Seidel probably is not available now because he had some other important meeting. He left. But I would like to just take up a couple of questions which I think are very, very important, particularly from the policy perspective. Since I'll request Secretary Ramachandran if he can kindly address some of the concerns which uh, many of the participants have really expressed. What is the possible way out to integrate public transport, especially within tier 1 and tier 2 cities? How can we really do that? Because tier 2 cities particularly do not have any kind of public transport system which is really available. That's one question which, as a matter of fact, quite a few number of participants have really posed. Since you had mentioned particularly about the national highway, so one of the question which is also asked is, uh, can there be a possibility for a dedicated freight corridor on national highways, which will really help movement of goods, freight traffic, particularly the trucks? Although, of course, this was not our subject, but then there are people who are very keen to know, because both heavy vehicles, when they are moving on the national highways, can there be a dedicated corridor? So I'll just like to just request you if you are able to address these one or two questions. Uh, can we unmute Dr. Ramachandran, please? Sonam, can we unmute Dr. Ramachandran?
Yeah, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, the first point is about integration of public transport in tier 1 and tier 2 cities. It's been a long journey, and I have many things to say on this, but I'll try to be brief. See, when we look at the list of functions which are entrusted to the urban local bodies, transport does not really figure as a subject allotted to the city bodies generally. There are exceptions like Mumbai, where BEST has been doing this work for quite some time. But when it comes to the next level of cities, this is not a subject mandated to them, particularly so because since local bodies do not have the type of resources also, they can't be expected to invest in buses and run the city services. The one big difference which came about was, as I said, when the Urban Renewal Mission was launched, various tier 1 cities, if I may put it like that, thought it appropriate to take some initiative, and special purpose vehicles came into existence to run this. Indore is a classic example. Then wherever BRTS came up, there have been special purpose vehicles like Ahmedabad, Denmark, and the like. So there have been initiatives, but these have been mostly confined to the first level of cities. It's very difficult to say anything about how this can be taken to the next level, because when it comes to buses, since it is huge investment, unless there is a government program supporting it, local bodies themselves are not in a position to take it up. Then it is left to the state governments, because transport is a state subject, urban development is a state subject. How many states are willing and keen to take this up? That is the question. So I think unless the states take the big step forward and think of introducing buses for the next level of cities also, we do not have much hope in the given scenario. The second point about a dedicated freight corridor for the national highways, I may not be the right person to comment on this, but I think currently the emphasis is on developing national highways and giving connectivity at least to all district headquarters to start with. Now, as far as freight corridors are concerned, a faster movement would be through the rail segment, and which is already being provided for in at least the key areas of the country. So that is their rail could be, road could be a little bit more costly, but this is a point about which I'm not very sure whether the Highways Authority would have considered. I think it could be slightly difficult at this stage to provide for this, because globally also, if I will be corrected, I think there is no segregation as such when it comes to the motorways and the like. There could be some reason why it is not desirable. So I can only pass on this request to the chairman of the Highways Authority whenever we happen to talk again. At the moment, I don't have an answer, but I'll have to talk to more people and find out why this is not being done. Thank you.
Can I also add on one more small question? As a policy maker, I think you will be the best person to address that. The public transport system is highly taxed. The taxes are very high, irrespective of whether these are, I would say, state road transport corporations or the private sector. Private sector in particular actually feels very heavy taxes, and as a result, the public transport per se becomes very, very expensive. Or, the state road transport undertakings, because of these high taxes, are not able to generate enough resources for their further expansion. So, do you think that there are any possibilities that we can really address these issues, because somehow the taxes became a major source of revenue for the state governments? Nobody thought of the economic efficiency part of it. I mean, this is a question by at least couple of participants.
This is a point which the transport sector always tries to raise when budget formulation takes place, and I don't think there has been much success. The point is, for the states, there are certain given sources of revenue like excise, transport, and the like, and they continue to stick to that because that is what forms part of their overall revenue. So they are not in a very comfortable position to reduce taxation in this. I mean, the counter question could be, is transport or the mode which is used by a larger number of people, is that the mode to be taxed in such a way? Unfortunately, there is no direct answer unless governments respond to this particular point. Governments also could say that even if the taxation is high on the one side, on the other, when it comes to state transport undertakings, they extend a lot of support also. Even buying buses, investing in buses, that's a support which they provide. So there is some sort of compensation also simultaneously taking place when taxes here are high. But I'm not sure. I have a feeling like at one stage in our country, we went in for free electricity for the farmers or the rural areas. I have a feeling slowly, steadily, we'll have to move to a regime where if public transport is really to reach the levels which we expect, then there will have to be a lot of governments taking responsibility for this, in the sense that substantial burden is borne by the governments themselves. You can see this in the case of metro, that is happening. The case of public undertakings in the transport sector, it is happening. Private, of course, they keep raising this point. Fare fixation is one method whereby everyone tries to get some sort of compensation. But we have also indirectly hinted at the response to this. Today, what the government is saying is fuel price hike. It's also partly because the governments need revenue from some sources from where it can generate revenue in this current difficult situation. So similarly, transport is also one subject traditionally where states have been raising their revenues. So I don't see an easy method of getting over this, but at the same time, we also need to take into account what all compensations are provided. As I said, the running of the undertakings itself, they are supported by state governments, investment in buses, providing modern amenities, all these are taken up by governments at some stage or the other. So I will not be able to give a definite answer to this point. They continue their efforts. If it works, fine. But then ultimately the question is, where does the government find this revenue to run the state or the country?
Thank you so much. Alok, there are one or two questions. Will you be able to kindly address them? It's a very interesting question which a participant has asked. Is digitalization a necessity or a luxury? Is it essential?
It is essential now. It's like your computer now. You want to write on a,
for countries like India.
Yeah, it is a necessity. For us, we don't have the luxury of spending too much money and spending, what London spent on its ITS. So what if you look at Delhi and London, we would have spent 1,000th of what London spent in their ITS, and would have enabled almost the same functionalities.
although this is not directly concerning you, but still I'd like to pose because you are living in Delhi and DIMS is also addressing the issue. What is the better energy solution for commercial vehicles in the Indian market? Alternative sources of energy. We are, of course, talking of CNG we are using in Delhi or in some other cities. We are also now moving towards electric mobility, but there are also, talks of hydrogen cell or other possibilities. Are there any suggestions from your side?
So I'm not a fuel
expert, basically.
But what I feel is, at this point, public transport itself solves a bigger issue, which is, being eco-friendly. Whether that eco-friendliness, gets translated to fuel cells or electric mobility, it will be in a higher saving. But at this point, we save if we can provide public transport currently in the CNG form itself. We will be doing much more for the environment than spending money. The focus should be on getting more buses right now. Delhi needs 11,000 buses, irrespective of fuel.
Okay. Thank you so much. Well, friends, actually, there are almost like 50 questions which have been asked. What we plan to do is we'll, share these questions with different panelists, seeking their responses, then collate them, and then revert back to you and sharing them with all those who joined us for this. Before I really close, I think we intend to run a poll where we need your help, not only of the attendees but also of the panelists. We have planned a set of series of webinars, and we are sharing with you some thoughts on which actually we should run these webinars. And I think the poll will just indicate to you that these are the kind of subjects that we are really thinking of. Kindly share your ideas on that. That will be very, very valuable. You have, I think you can also, I think all the panelists may also kindly indicate, their thoughts on that. You can give more than one choice, but basically. Good, that's very nice. I think we got some good responses from you, those who are there with us now, and based on that, we will actually take a call, which one really to be taken up in our next webinars. Of course, on 16th of July, we are having the coming webinar basically on the electric mobility with a focus on electric buses per se, and we'll invite all of you to join us on that. With that, I think I'd like to take opportunity thanking all the four very distinguished panelists, sharing your ideas and thoughts, and perhaps I think we will like to share a recorded version of this with all the attendees for this workshop, for this seminar, for the webinar, so that and this will be available also on the Busworld's website. It will be available by say next coming Monday. It will be there with all the possible replies as well. Thank you so much. Each one of you, Secretary Ramachandran Saab, Alok, Steffi, and also Mr. Seidel from from the industry. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.